Let's start the second part of the program from Nigeria. As part of the plans to fund the 2016 budget, the government recently indicated intention to borrow 1.8 trillion naira principally for investment in capital projects to stimulate the flagging economy. In a written statement, the finance ministry explained that the country is looking at options, quote unquote, to borrow from the African Development Bank and export credit agencies such as China Exim Bank due to their concessionary rates of interest. Some economic analysts believe borrowing from the World Bank to help fund a record budget in 2016 will help Nigeria's economic woes.
According to the Minister of Finance, the country is planning to borrow as much as $5 billion to help fund the budget deficit due to a slump in oil revenues, of which $4 billion might come from international institutions and the rest from Eurobonds. The sharp drop in crude revenues, which provide 95% of foreign earnings, has led to the naira hitting record lows on the parallel market as foreign exchange reserves dwindle. Analysts have welcomed the move, saying it will help Nigeria's economic woes.
First and foremost, is it a good idea to borrow? Yes. Is it a good idea to spend and fund your budget by deficit, thereby stimulating the economy and jump-starting it into growth? Yes. Is it a good idea, or is it efficient to borrow from the multilaterals at concessionary rates? It's an excellent idea. So all told, this is the best way to go for Nigeria. What are we going to use the proceeds of the borrowing for? Important question. The proceeds are going to be used to fund projects within the budget which have lifespans in excess of 1 year.
The World Bank and other institutions like the International Monetary Fund have recommended that Nigeria devalue its currency, which trade officially at a huge premium to the secondary market. According to analysts, devaluations could form part of loan deals.
A deficit budget funded by concessionary loans from the multilateral agencies is prudent and cost-effective. In other words, you are borrowing at an average rate of 2% or 3% as against market rates of 12%. You're saving Nigeria 900 basis points, right? 9% on almost $4 billion. That is significant.
Mr. Bismarck Rwani added that Nigeria's economy in 2016 will start the slow path to recovery, and in 2017 there will be a consolidation of those gains.
Part of the process to bring it back to the path of growth. So one singular act will not turn your economy around, but it is part of a cocktail of measures that will help take the economy from the trough down to the path of recovery. So the Nigerian economy is going to recover because of improved conditions in the oil markets, which we will see later on in the year, because of blocking of leakages and the fight against corruption. It will improve because there's a Marshall Plan to invest in the Northeast and the Niger Delta. It will be stimulated into an active path because of the capital formation and the confidence which is restored, which will make investors bring money into this market.
Nigeria expects a budget deficit of 3 trillion naira in 2016, and that's up from 2.2 trillion naira previously estimated, as a slump in oil revenues has eroded public finances and hit its currency.
All right, let's cross over to Europe, where the markets are opening in a mix today. Open mix now in the red, from stocks to bonds, oil and currencies. Let's bring in Olaf Okrega, who is a DWTV financial correspondent for Channels Television Live at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, where the German DAX is tanking there across Olaf's shoulder. Good afternoon, Olaf. Good to have you on the program. Talk us through how the first trading day is shaping up.
Well, it doesn't look pretty much like that we have another roller coaster day here on Monday, probably a roller coaster week. In other words, we are going back to the south, tremendously to the south. German shares are down. In the meantime, pretty much close to 3%, but not only in Frankfurt, all over Europe, the same picture. European shares hit the lowest level since October 2014, and the markets are suffering the same concerns than last week and all the other weeks we saw. It's the weak economy in China, it's complete unclear situation on the real material market, the low oil price, for example. And there's another thing. I talked to an analyst a couple of hours ago, and he said apparently the US Federal Reserve might have miscalculated if they pushed up interest rates in December last year, the first increase since 2006. It is probably a huge impact here in Frankfurt.
We'll talk about the Fed in about a minute and the ECB, but Olaf, let's talk about the economic and geopolitical issues from Asia. The North Korea missile test over the weekend. Are you guys, investors in Frankfurt, scared about a missile test?
Well, this geopolitical situation, as you already mentioned, is also a big concern because it leads to a huge uncertainty in the market, and uncertainty is not that good for equity markets, not even in Frankfurt, all over the world. And what we hear from Asia and what we hear from different parts of the world means that the global economy is, let's put it this way, in kind of trouble. And that is here in Frankfurt a big issue and a big concern as well.
Okay, so let's get back to the Reserve Bank story, the US Fed. You talk about likely miscalculation in December. Now all eyes are on the month of March, interest rate certain, the ECB as well. Do you think these two Reserve Banks will be able to lift the global markets, as it were?
Probably the central banks all over the world are pretty much in charge to do something, to solve this problem, and that means make more stimulus, more liquidity for the markets to get them back into positive territory. And Mario Draghi, who's the president of the European Central Bank, pointed out different times that he is absolutely willing to do everything as much as he can to bring more stability back into the markets.
Okay, Olaf, let's leave it there. Not a very nice way to start the week, but let's hang it in there with the markets in Frankfurt for us, and see you later in the week. Olaf Krieger, DWTV financial correspondent for Channels Television. Let's talk about South Africa's currency, the rand, strengthening today along with other emerging markets current units after softer than expected employment data from the US last week, decreasing bets of a rate hike by the Fed. The rand firmed 0.29% to 15.9 per dollar in early trade, managing a third straight session below the crucial 16 mark as it consolidated recent gains on the US dollar. The rand has gained more than 5% against the dollar in the last 2 weeks, since slumping to an all-time low of 17.9 on January the 11th. Bonds were weaker, however, in early trade today, with benchmark paper due in 2026 adding 4.5 basis points to 9.215%. In Russia, a weak ruble that has hit record lows is pressuring a Russian household in the Moscow region that holds a foreign currency mortgage. The family fears their home will be repossessed, leaving the 29 children in their care, some with special needs out on the street.
Mother and daughter Marina Mikhailova and Elena Riknova live in a house with 29 children. Some are their own, and others have fostered into their care over a period of several years. The large Russian family is living in a house in the Moscow region for which they took a US dollar mortgage in 2007 and turned into a care center for children with special needs. But the family is now looking to an uncertain future, fearing they will be forced out of their home as the ruble sinks to record lows and their mortgage repayments soar.
In 2007, when our family started to grow, Alina gave birth to a first baby, and then, apart from my 3 daughters, the first foster child appeared with Down syndrome, who was placed in a Russian family, our Petya, So the family expanded, and it became necessary for us, for the normal development of children with disabilities, to buy a type of living space, which allowed for us to have play areas, special areas for development, which were necessary for these children.
Elena says the family could not get a ruble mortgage approved by any banks at the time and were lured into taking one in foreign currency.
They did not approve rubles for us, and we for a long time, spoke to various banks to give us help. They did not give a loan to my parents, and so I had to take a mortgage in my name, a foreign currency mortgage, for 25 years.
But the family is now only managing to scrap through and says they still owe the bank a sum that is just under $350,000 US, the amount that was originally loaned to them.
For 9 years, we tried to handle it as much as we could. The first time the dollar grew in value, we survived it. Then the second revaluation of the dollar happened, so we borrowed other loans to repay the payments that were due. But after the third revaluation of the dollar, we came to a point where banks wouldn't give us any more loans to repay the mortgage payments, so now we just don't know what to do.
The central bank in January 2015 advised banks to convert their clients' dollar mortgages into ruble, once using more favorable exchange rates, but gave no firm orders. Vladimir Putin said in April that year that any government help for foreign currency borrowers should be no greater than for those who had borrowed in rubles. But Rikanova says her family has not received any assistance from government bodies or the banks.
We reached out to the presidential administration. We have written numerous letters and got no response. We reached out to the United Russia, and that letter also went unanswered. We reached out to the central bank, but was left unanswered. And then we reached out to the bank itself directly, but they also say, there is nothing we can do to help you. You have to deal with your own problems.
Markelova says she feels lost and has no solution if their home is repossessed and they are out on the streets.
Now, currently there are 29 children living in our house. How do I deal with these children right now with disabilities, whether they are my own children or fostered? How am I supposed to go on the street with them? And where would I go? Where can I find the right place to live, and how do I buy it, so that going forward we can not only live but also help develop our children?
Some economists say Russian officials are right to tread carefully with the problem of dollar mortgages. They warn about the dangers of forcing banks to convert foreign currency loans into rubles, as such a move would contradict free market practices and add to losses in the banking sector.
All right, when we come back after the break, we'll take a look at China's currency reserves. The country burning almost $100 billion in the first 30 days of 2016.